They'll all find out sooner or later. You know that, don't you?
The text message glowed on Carla's phone screen like a neon sign advertising my own humiliation. Weekend getaway with my ex. Don't wait up. I stood there in my garage at 2 a.m, grease still under my fingernails from working on Mrs. Patterson's ancient Buick, staring at my wife's phone that she'd left charging on my workbench. The semicolon in parenthesis felt like a slap across my 43-year-old face. Who uses a winking emoji when destroying a 15-year marriage? Didn't plan to, I muttered to the empty garage, my voice echoing off the concrete walls lined with tools I'd collected over 2 decades of fixing other people's broken things. Apparently, I couldn't fix my own. Nick Morrison, that's me, master mechanic, small-town nobody. And as of this moment, officially the last person in Millfield to know his wife was screwing around. The irony wasn't lost on me. I could diagnose a failing transmission by sound alone, but I'd missed every warning sign that my marriage was running on empty. Carla's phone buzzed again. Another message from Brandon, with a heart emoji next to his name. Brandon Kemp, junior partner at her law firm, the kind of guy who wore designer suits to impress other people's wives and probably couldn't change a tire if his trust fund depended on it. Can't wait to see you in that red dress. Room 237 at the Pineview Motel? The Pineview Motel. Jesus Christ. If you're going to cheat on your husband, at least have the decency to do it somewhere that doesn't charge by the hour and advertise adult movies on a flickering neon sign. I set her phone down carefully, the way I'd handle a live wire. My hands were steady, mechanic's hands, calloused and scarred from years of honest work. The same hands that had held Carla when she cried about her mother's cancer. The same hands that had built our daughter Kayla's treehouse. The same hands that were about to change the locks on our house. Nothing like a little home renovation at 2 a.m., I thought, pulling my toolbox from the shelf. Thanks, Carla. Our house sat on Maple Street, a tired 2-story colonial that we'd bought when Kayla was 5. The neighborhood had seen better days. Half the houses needed new roofs, and the Hendersons' place had been for sale so long, the realtor sign was growing moss. But it was ours. Or it had been ours. I worked methodically, replacing the deadbolt and door handle with surgical precision. Each turn of the screwdriver felt like closing a chapter. 15 years of marriage, reduced to a pile of old hardware on the front porch. By sunrise, I had Carla's clothes boxed and loaded in my pickup truck. Designer suits, expensive shoes, that red dress Brandon was so eager to see, all of it crammed into cardboard boxes like evidence from a crime scene. The drive to Brandon's apartment complex took 12 minutes. Riverside Gardens, the kind of place that tried to sound upscale but was really just overpriced boxes stacked on top of each other. I found his building, 3rd floor, corner unit with a BMW parked underneath. The same BMW I'd seen in the law firm's parking lot when I'd picked Carla up for lunch last month. I stacked the boxes neatly by his door and left a note on top. Special delivery from your girlfriend's husband. Enjoy the red dress. It looks better in boxes. My phone rang as I was driving home. Carla's ringtone. Crazy. By Patsy Cline. The irony was intentional when I'd said it 2 years ago. Now, it just seemed prophetic. Nick, where are you? I can't get into the house. That's because you don't live there anymore. Silence. Then, what do you mean? I mean your weekend getaway just became permanent. Check Brandon's doorstep. Nick, listen to me. I hung up. The phone rang again immediately. I turned it off and drove to Marty's bar. The last hand opened early for the construction crews and shift workers. Marty Sullivan had been my best friend since high school, back when we thought we'd conquer the world with nothing but attitude and beer money. He'd become a cop, then a bar owner after a drunk driver ended his patrol days with a shattered hip. I'd become a mechanic because I liked fixing things that made sense. You look like hell, Marty said, sliding a coffee across the bar. The place was empty except for old Pete Garrison nursing his morning beer and watching Sports Center on the corner TV. Carla's been screwing her coworker. Marty's face went through several expressions before settling on resignation. The lawyer guy? Brandon what's-his-face? You knew? Suspected. She's been coming in here with her girlfriends, talking loud about how she deserves better than a grease monkey. Last week, Lily mentioned something about Carla having lunch dates that lasted 3 hours. Lily Chen, Carla's best friend since law school, the kind of woman who collected gossip like some people collected stamps. If Lily knew, then half the town knew. Why didn't you tell me? Marty poured himself a shot of bourbon and knocked it back. Would you have believed me? He was right. I would have defended Carla, made excuses, found reasons why my wife of 15 years couldn't possibly be cheating. Love makes you stupid that way. So what's your play? Marty asked. I changed the locks, boxed her stuff, left it at Loverboy's apartment. That's a start. What about the divorce? I hadn't thought that far ahead. The word divorce felt foreign, like a language I'd never learned to speak. But sitting in Marty's bar at 7 in the morning, drinking coffee that tasted like regret, I realized I was about to get a crash course. I need to think. You need a lawyer. Can't afford one. Not like Carla can. That was the truth that stung most. Carla made 3 times my salary, had connections throughout the county legal system, and now she had Brandon whispering strategy in her ear between bedroom sessions. I had calloused hands, a mortgage, and a daughter who was probably going to hate me for breaking up her family. My phone buzzed. A text from my neighbor, Mrs. Graft. Saw Carla crying on the porch this morning. Everything okay? The neighborhood gossip network was already spinning up. By noon, everyone on Maple Street would know that Nick Morrison's wife had locked herself out of her own house. By evening, they'd know why. I finished my coffee and headed home. Carla's BMW was in the driveway, and she was sitting on the porch steps like a refugee from her own life. Her makeup was smeared, her hair disheveled, and she was wearing the same clothes from yesterday. The red dress was probably still in the box at Brandon's place. Nick, please, we need to talk. We needed to talk before you started texting your boyfriend about weekend getaways. Her face went white. You read my messages. You left your phone on my workbench right next to the text about room 237 at the Pineview. She started crying then, the kind of theatrical sobbing that had worked on me for 15 years. But something had changed overnight. Maybe it was the image of her in that motel room, or maybe it was the realization that I'd been the fool in this story for longer than I wanted to admit. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You're screwing Brandon Kemp, and you've been planning this for months. Nick, save it for someone who cares. I walked past her to the front door, key in hand. She followed, still talking, still making excuses, still trying to rewrite history in real time. But the new lock turned smoothly, and the door closed behind me with a sound like finality. Through the window, I watched her sit back down on the steps. Mrs. Graft was peeking through her curtains, probably taking notes for her next phone call to the neighborhood watch. This was going to be the best gossip Maple Street had seen since the Henderson's son got arrested for selling dope at the high school. My phone rang, Kayla's number. Dad, Mom called me crying. She says you locked her out of the house. My daughter, 20 years old, junior at State, studying communications with a minor in social media drama. She'd inherited Carla's looks and my stubbornness, a combination that had made her teenage years feel like a war zone. Your mother made some choices, sweetheart. Now she's dealing with the consequences. What choices? Dad, you're scaring me. I closed my eyes. How do you tell your daughter that her mother is a cheater without sounding like the bitter ex-husband you're about to become? Ask your mother. She's got all the answers. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen and tried to figure out what came next. The house felt different already, emptier, but also cleaner somehow, like I'd finally taken out trash that had been stinking up the place for months. My phone buzzed with notifications, Facebook, Instagram, text messages. The Millfield gossip machine was warming up, and I was about to become the main attraction. A text from Lily. Heard about you and Carla. So sorry, Nick. If you need anything. Right. Lily, who'd known about the affair and said nothing. Lily, who'd probably been helping Carla plan her exit strategy over martinis and girl talk. Another text, this one from Brandon. We need to talk. This doesn't have to get ugly. I stared at that message for a long time. Brandon Kemp, Esquire, trying to negotiate with the grease monkey, probably thought he could intimidate me with lawyer speak and empty threats. I typed back, You're right, it's already ugly. Then I turned off my phone and went to work. I had an engine to rebuild, and unlike my marriage, it was something I could actually fix. Monday morning hit Millfield like a hangover. I was under the hood of a '98 Camaro when my phone started buzzing with the kind of persistence that meant trouble. The caller ID showed Carla's number, but I let it go to voicemail while I finished replacing the alternator belt. The garage where I worked, Morrison's Auto Repair, though I only owned half of it, sat on the edge of town where Main Street gave up trying to be important. My business partner, Tom Bradley, had been running the front desk for 20 years and had opinions about everything, especially my personal life. Your wife's been calling every 10 minutes, Tom said. wiping his hands on a rag that had seen better decades. Sounds pretty worked up. Ex-wife, I corrected, though the papers hadn't been filed yet. That was quick. I gave him the abbreviated version while I worked. Tom nodded along like he'd been expecting this conversation for years. Always thought she was too good for her own good, if you know what I mean, he said. The way she'd look at this place when she picked you up, like she was slumming it. That stung, because it was true. Carla had stopped coming to the garage years ago, claiming she was too busy with work, but I'd seen that look Tom mentioned. The way she'd wrinkle her nose at the smell of motor oil and industrial solvent, like honest work, had an odor that offended her. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. Nick Morrison? This is Patricia Keating from Keating, Walsh & Associates. I represent your wife in her divorce proceedings. That was fast. Less than 48 hours since I'd changed the locks. And Carla already had a lawyer calling. Not just any lawyer. Patricia Keating, the most expensive divorce attorney in 3 counties. She's not my wife anymore, I said. Mr. Morrison, I'm calling to inform you that my client will be seeking an emergency court order to regain access to the marital home. We'd prefer to handle this amicably. Amicably? I almost laughed. Your client was screwing her co-worker in a motel room while I was working overtime to pay her credit card bills. Ship sailed on amicable. Mr. Morrison, I understand you're upset. Lady, you have no idea what I am. I hung up and went back to work. But my hands were shaking now, and I dropped a wrench twice before Tom took it away from me. You need a lawyer, he said. Can't afford Patricia Keating. So get someone else. My cousin Danny does divorce law. He's not fancy, but he's mean when he needs to be. I was considering that when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your husband's having a meltdown. #divorce drama. #Millfield mess. It was a screenshot of Kayla's Instagram story, shared by someone who thought I needed to see my own daughter throwing me under the bus for social media likes. The post had a picture of our house with Carla's BMW in the driveway and crying face emojis scattered around like digital tears. The comments were already piling up. OMG, what happened? Your parents are getting divorced? Your dad seems like such a nice guy, though. Plot twist coming. 20 years old and she was turning our family crisis into content for her followers. I wanted to be angry, but mostly I felt tired. When did everything become a performance? I called Danny Bradley, Tom's cousin, and made an appointment for Wednesday. Then I drove to the Pineview Motel. I'm not sure what I expected to find there. The scene of the crime, maybe. Some evidence that would make sense of how 15 years of marriage had ended up in a room that rented by the hour. The motel sat on Route 9, the kind of place that catered to truckers and people having affairs. The parking lot was mostly empty at 2 in the afternoon, just a few cars that looked like they'd been there since the Clinton administration. Room 237 was on the 2nd floor, overlooking the dumpster. Romantic. I was standing there, trying to imagine Carla in that red dress climbing these stairs when a voice behind me said, "You looking for someone?" I turned around. The desk clerk was maybe 60, with the kind of face that had seen everything twice and wasn't impressed by any of it. "Just curious about the accommodations," I said. He looked me up and down, taking in my work clothes and the grease under my fingernails. "You don't look like our usual clientele." "What's your usual clientele?" "Folks who pay cash and don't ask questions." I pulled out my wallet and showed him a picture of Carla from my driver's license holder. "You seen her before?" He studied the photo, then looked at me with something that might have been sympathy. "Mister, I make it a point not to remember faces. Bad for business." But his expression told me everything I needed to know. Carla had been here, probably more than once. I drove home through downtown Millfield, past the courthouse where I'd probably be spending a lot of time in the coming months, past the law offices where Carla worked, past the coffee shop where she used to meet her girlfriends to complain about her boring husband. The town looked different now, like I was seeing it through new eyes. Every building held memories that felt contaminated. The restaurant where we'd celebrated our 10th anniversary. The movie theater where we'd had our first date. The church where we'd gotten married in front of 200 people who were probably already gossiping about our divorce. When I got home, there was a process server waiting on my porch. A kid who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, holding an envelope like it might explode. "Nick Morrison? That's me. You've been served." The papers were exactly what Patricia Keating had threatened. An emergency motion for Carla to regain access to the house, plus a restraining order that prohibited me from maltreating, intimidating, or interfering with my wife. I was reading through the legal language when Carla's BMW pulled into the driveway. She got out slowly, like she was approaching a wild animal. Nick, we need to talk. Your lawyer said you prefer to handle this amicably. This doesn't feel amicable. She looked tired, older than her 38 years. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she wasn't wearing makeup. For a moment, she looked like the woman I'd married. Before the law degree, before the designer clothes, before Brandon. I never wanted it to happen this way. How did you want it to happen? Were you planning to ease me into the idea of you screwing around? It's not about Zex, Nick. It's about feeling alive again. That stopped me cold. Feeling alive? What the hell does that mean? It means I've been dying inside this marriage for years. It means I wake up every morning feeling trapped. It means you're a cheater who's trying to make it sound noble. Her face hardened. The vulnerable moment passed, replaced by the lawyer who knew how to argue a case. I want half the house, half your pension, and spousal support. Danny Bradley already called Patricia's office. He seems nice, but Nick, you're outgunned here. Make this easy on yourself. Easy on myself? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Carla, I haven't made anything easy on myself since the day I married you. She turned to go, then stopped. For what it's worth, I am sorry it ended this way. No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught. After she left, I sat on my porch and watched Mrs. Graft pretend to water her garden while obviously listening to every word. The restraining order was still in my hand, and I read it again, looking for loopholes. The legal language was designed to intimidate, but I'd been dealing with intimidation my whole life. Rich customers who thought they could bully me into free work. Suppliers who tried to cheat me on parts. A wife who'd spent years making me feel like I wasn't good enough. My phone buzzed. A text from Marty. Heard about the papers. Come by the bar tonight. First round's on me. Then another text, this one from Lily. Nick, I know you're hurting, but Carla's my friend. I hope we can all be adults about this. I stared at that message for a long time. Lily, who'd known about the affair. Lily, who'd probably been covering for Carla for months. Lily, who was now trying to play peacemaker while her best friend was taking me to the cleaners. I typed back, being an adult is overrated. Ask your friend. The last hand was busier than usual for a Monday night. Word travels fast in a small town, and apparently my personal drama was the evening's entertainment. I could feel eyes on me as I walked to the bar, conversations stopping mid-sentence, the kind of attention that made me want to crawl under a rock. Marty had my beer ready before I sat down. Rough day? Getting rougher? I told him about the restraining order, the lawyer, Kayla's Instagram post. He listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding like he'd heard this story before. You know what your problem is, he said when I finished. Enlighten me. You're playing defense. Carla's got lawyers, money, public sympathy because she's the wronged wife who finally escaped her blue-collar husband. You're reacting to everything she does instead of making her react to you. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting you remember who you are. You're Nick Morrison. You've been fixing impossible problems your whole life. This is just another broken machine. I was considering that when the door opened and Brandon walked in. He was wearing a suit that probably cost more than I made in a month, looking around the bar like he'd accidentally wandered into a zoo. The conversation stopped entirely. Every eye in the place turned to watch what would happen next. Brandon spotted me and walked over, his lawyer confidence intact, despite being in hostile territory. Nick, I think we should talk. I think you should leave. Look, I know this is awkward. Awkward? I stood up slowly. You're screwing my wife in a motel room and you think it's awkward? The bar was dead silent now. Even the jukebox seemed to be holding its breath. It's not about you, Brandon said, which was possibly the dumbest thing he could have said. It's not about me? You're destroying my marriage? And it's not about me? Your marriage was already over. Carla told me I didn't plan what happened next. 20 years of working with my hands had given me reflexes that bypassed my brain. My fist connected with Brandon's perfectly straight nose before I'd consciously decided to throw the punch. He went down hard, blood streaming from his nostrils, his expensive suit getting acquainted with the sticky floor of the last hand. Now it's about me, I said. The bar erupted. Half the patrons were cheering, the other half were pulling out their phones to record. Marty was already moving around the bar, but I was walking toward the door. Nick, he called after me. I turned back. Put his drinks on my tab. Outside, I sat in my truck and waited for the adrenaline to fade. My knuckles were already swelling, and I could feel the weight of what I'd just done settling on my shoulders. I'd attacked a lawyer in public, with witnesses and probably video evidence. My phone was already buzzing with notifications. Someone had posted the video to Facebook. The headline read, "Local mechanic decks wife's boyfriend at Last Hand Bar." Great. Now I was internet famous for all the wrong reasons. But as I drove home through the quiet streets of Millfield, I realized something had changed. For the first time in months, maybe years, I didn't feel like I was apologizing for existing. Marty was right. I'd been playing defense my whole marriage. Time to change the game. The video of me punching Brandon had 43,000 views by Wednesday morning. 43,000 people watching Nick Morrison, small-town mechanic, introduce Brandon Kemp's face to the floor of the Last Hand. The comments were split between people calling me a hero and people calling me a thug. My favorite comment, "Finally, someone who doesn't settle things with lawyers." My least favorite, toxic masculinity at its finest. This man needs anger management. I was reading through the responses over coffee when my phone rang. Danny Bradley, my new lawyer, sounding like he'd rather be defending serial butchers. "Nick, please tell me you didn't actually attack opposing counsel in a public bar. I punched a guy who was screwing my wife. The fact that he's a lawyer is just a bonus. This complicates things." "How?" "Carla's team is going to use this to paint you as violent and unstable. They'll argue you're a threat to their client's safety." I thought about that while I watched Mrs. Graft through my kitchen window. She was on her phone, probably giving a play-by-play of my morning routine to whoever would listen. "Danny, let me ask you something. In your professional opinion, how screwed am I?" "On a scale of 1 to 10, about a 7, but Nick, I've seen worse cases turn around." "What would it take to get to a 5? "Stop punching people. Lay low. Let me handle the legal stuff." After I hung up, I drove to work and tried to pretend my life wasn't falling apart in real time. Tom was waiting with a stack of messages and the kind of grin that meant trouble. "You're famous," he said, showing me his phone. The video had made it to YouTube, TikTok, and something called World Star Hip Hop. Great, always wanted to be known for my right hook. Could be worse, could be known for getting punched. He had a point. In the video, Brandon went down like he'd been shot, while I barely moved. Whatever else happened, I'd won that particular exchange. The phone rang constantly all morning. Reporters wanting interviews, lawyers offering their services, and people I hadn't talked to in years suddenly concerned about my well-being. I ignored most of them, but one call caught my attention. "Mr. Morrison? This is Janet Walsh from Channel 7 News. We'd like to get your side of the story." "What story?" "The video of you attacking Brandon Kemp has gone viral. We're doing a segment on domestic disputes in small towns." "It wasn't domestic. It was public." She laughed like I'd made a joke. "Would you be willing to do an on-camera interview?" I was about to say no when something occurred to me. "What kind of questions would you ask?" "Oh, background on the marriage, what led to the confrontation, how you're dealing with the divorce proceedings." "And you'd ask Brandon the same questions?" "If he agrees to an interview, yes." "Set it up." Tom looked at me like I'd lost my mind after I hung up. "You sure about this?" "Nope, but I'm tired of other people telling my story." The interview was scheduled for Friday afternoon at the garage. Janet Walsh turned out to be a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who'd probably been covering small-town drama since before I got married. She brought a cameraman who looked bored and a producer who kept checking her phone. "We'll start with some basic background," Janet said, adjusting her microphone. "Then move into the events leading up to Monday night." The camera rolled, and she launched into her questions. How long had I been married? When did I first suspect the affair? What was going through my mind when I hit Brandon? I answered honestly, which seemed to surprise her. Most people probably gave her rehearsed sound bites and careful non-answers. I told her about finding the text messages, changing the locks, the restraining order. "Some people are calling you a hero," she said. "Others say you're a bully. How do you respond to that?" "I'm a guy who got tired of being walked on. People can call that whatever they want." "Do you regret punching Mr. Kemp?" I thought about that for a moment. I regret that it took me 15 years to stand up for myself. The interview ran that Friday night right after the weather. They'd edited it down to 3 minutes, but I came across better than I'd expected. Calm, reasonable, a working-class guy who'd been pushed too far. Brandon's interview ran the next night. He looked polished and professional, talking about the unfortunate incident and how violence was never the answer. But something was off. His nose was bandaged and he kept touching it unconsciously. He looked like what he was, a guy who'd gotten his A kicked and was trying to save face. The public reaction was swift and brutal. Brandon's law firm's Facebook page was flooded with comments calling him a homewrecker. Someone had created a fake Yelp review. Great at breaking up marriages, terrible at taking a punch. But the real damage came from an unexpected source. Saturday morning, I was having breakfast at Mabel's diner when Lily walked in. She looked around nervously, spotted me in my usual booth, and walked over like she was approaching a bomb. "Nick, can we talk?" "Depends on what you want to talk about." She slid into the seat across from me, her hands shaking slightly. "I need to tell you something about Carla and Brandon." "I think I know enough." "No, you don't." She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "The affair started 8 months ago, but Nick, it wasn't just about Zex. They've been planning this divorce for months. Carla's been moving money, hiding assets, building a case. That got my attention." "What kind of case?" "She's been documenting everything. Every time you came home late from work, every time you had a beer with dinner, every argument you two had. She's been painting you as an heavy drinker, an absent husband, potentially violent." "Potentially violent?" "She told Brandon you'd threatened her, said you grabbed her arm during an argument last year." I remembered that argument. Carla had been drinking wine and trying to walk down our steep basement stairs to do laundry. I'd grabbed her arm to keep her from falling. She'd been grateful at the time. "Why are you telling me this?" Lily looked around the diner, making sure no one was listening. "Because I'm tired of being her accomplice. And because after you punched Brandon, she laughed." "She laughed?" "She said it was perfect. Now she had proof you were violent. She was actually happy you punched him." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. She set me up. I don't know if she planned it, but she definitely used it. Lily left after that, but her words stayed with me. I drove home and started looking at my marriage with new eyes. The arguments that had seemed random now looked strategic. The way Carla had pushed my buttons, then acted like the sufferer when I reacted. I called Danny and told him what Lily had said. "Can she testify to that?" he asked. "I don't know. Maybe." "Nick, if what you're telling me is true, this changes everything. Carla's been building a fraud case against you. What do we do about it?" "We build a case against her." That afternoon, I started digging through our financial records, bank statements, credit card bills, tax returns. I'd always let Carla handle the money. She was the lawyer, after all. But now I was looking for patterns, discrepancies, anything that didn't add up. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. Over the past year, Carla had been systematically draining our joint accounts. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. Money that should have gone to our mortgage, our retirement fund, Kayla's college expenses. She'd been funneling it into accounts I didn't even know existed. But the real smoking gun was in her credit card statements. Hotel charges, restaurant bills, expensive gifts. All for 2 people, all during times when she'd told me she was working late or attending legal conferences. The affair hadn't started 8 months ago. It had been going on for over a year. I made copies of everything and drove to Danny's office. He looked through the documents with the kind of focus that reminded me why Tom had recommended him. "This is good," he said finally. "Very good. She's been defrauding the marital estate, lying under oath about the timeline of the affair, and if Lily will testify about the setup, we can prove malicious prosecution." "What does that mean in plain English?" "It means instead of you paying her alimony, she might end up paying you." For the first time in weeks, I smiled. I like the sound of that. "Don't get ahead of yourself. We still have to prove it in court. And Nick, you can't punch anyone else, no matter what they do or say." I promised to behave, but as I drove home, I was already planning my next move. Carla thought she was playing chess while I was playing checkers. Time to show her that mechanics understand more than just engines. Some machines need a gentle touch to fix them. Others need to be completely rebuilt. The deposition was scheduled for Thursday morning at Patricia Keating's office, a glass and steel monument to expensive legal advice on the good side of town. I wore my only suit, the same one I'd gotten married in, and tried not to feel intimidated by the marble floors and abstract art that probably cost more than my truck. Danny met me in the lobby looking confident in the way that lawyers do when they know something the other side doesn't. "Remember," he said as we rode the elevator to the 15th floor, "answer only what they ask. Don't volunteer information. And Nick, whatever they say about you, don't react. What if they say something about Kayla? Especially then." Patricia Keating's conference room overlooked the entire town. From up here, Millfield looked like a toy train set, complete with miniature houses and streets that seemed too small for real people to live on. I could see my neighborhood, the garage where I worked, even the last hand where I'd punched Brandon. Carla was already there, sitting next to Patricia like they were old friends. She'd dressed for the occasion, conservative suit, minimal makeup, the kind of outfit that said responsible professional woman instead of cheating wife. She didn't look at me when I walked in. Brandon was there too, his nose still slightly swollen, but the bandages gone. He had a legal pad covered with notes and the kind of smirk that made me want to punch him again. The court reporter, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, set up her machine and asked me to raise my right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Patricia started with softball questions. My name, address, occupation, length of marriage. Then she moved into more dangerous territory. Mr. Morrison, isn't it true that you have a drinking problem? No. But you frequent the Last Hand bar several nights a week. I have a beer with friends. That's not a drinking problem. How many beers would you say you consume in a typical week? Danny objected, but I answered anyway. Maybe 6 or 7, less than a beer a day. And on the night you attacked Mr. Kemp, how many beers had you consumed? 1. Just 1? Just 1. She made a note like she didn't believe me, then moved on to our marriage. Would you describe your relationship with Mrs. Morrison as volatile? I describe it as normal. We had arguments like any married couple. Arguments that sometimes became physical. I felt Danny tense beside me. I never punched my wife. But you did grab her arm during an argument last year, didn't you? I kept her from falling down the basement stairs. She'd been drinking wine. So you admit to putting your hands on her. I admit to keeping her from breaking her neck. This went on for 2 hours. Patricia trying to paint me as an abusive drunk, me trying to stay calm while she twisted every normal marital moment into evidence of my character flaws. Carla sat there the whole time, nodding along like she was hearing these stories for the first time. Finally, it was Danny's turn. Mrs. Morrison, he said, consulting his notes. When did your affair with Mr. Kemp begin? Patricia objected, but Carla answered. We began seeing each other in March. March of this year. Yes. Are you sure about that date? Positive. Danny slid a credit card statement across the table. This shows a charge for 2 dinners at Romano's restaurant on February 14th of last year. Valentine's Day. Can you explain that? Carla's face went pale. I don't remember that specific charge. What about this hotel charge from last October? The Marriott downtown, charged to your personal credit card. You told your husband you were at a legal conference in Chicago that weekend. I could have. Mrs. Morrison, isn't it true that your affair with Mr. Kemp has been ongoing for over a year? Patricia was objecting frantically, but the damage was done. Carla had lied under oath about when the affair started, and now Danny had proof. But he wasn't finished. Mrs. Morrison, over the past 12 months, you've transferred approximately $37,000 from joint marital accounts into personal accounts that your husband knew nothing about. Can you explain those transfers? Those were for household expenses. Household expenses like this? He slid another document across the table. A $5,000 payment to Brandon Kemp's credit card company. The room went dead silent. Even the court reporter looked up from her machine. I was helping him with a temporary cash flow problem, Carla said weakly. You were using marital funds to pay your lover's bills? It wasn't like that. What was it like? Patricia called for a break, but it was too late. Carla looked like she was going to be sick, and Brandon was staring at the documents like they were written in a foreign language. In the hallway, Danny was practically glowing. That went better than I hoped. What happens now? Now they're going to want to settle. Fast. Before this gets any worse for them. He was right. Before we even made it to the elevator, Patricia was asking for a private conference. The settlement offer was generous. Carla would keep her car and her personal belongings, but I got the house, my pension, and no alimony payments. She would also reimburse the marital estate for the money she'd transferred. What about custody? I asked. Kayla's 20 years old, Patricia said. There's no custody issue. What about her college expenses? There was a long pause. Mrs. Morrison will continue to pay those. I looked at Danny, who nodded slightly. I'll think about it, I said. That night, I called Kayla and told her about the deposition. She listened without interrupting, which was unusual for her. Dad, I need to tell you something. What's that, sweetheart? Mom asked me to post that Instagram story. She said it would help her case if you looked unstable. I felt that familiar cold feeling in my stomach. What did you tell her? I told her I'd think about it. But Dad, I didn't want to do it. She kept pushing, saying it was just social media. It didn't mean anything. But you did it anyway. I was confused. She made it sound like you were having a breakdown, like I needed to protect myself. I closed my eyes. Even my own daughter had been turned into a weapon against me. Kayla, I need you to know something. I never had a breakdown. I just got tired of being lied to. I know that now. Dad, I'm sorry. It's not your fault. Your mother is very good at making people do what she wants. After we hung up, I sat on my porch and watched the sun set over Millfield. Mrs. Graft was in her garden, pretending to dope while obviously hoping I'd do something worth reporting. The Hendersons' house still had that for sale sign, and the Pineview Motel's neon sign was already flickering to life in the distance. My phone buzzed. A text from Marty. Heard the deposition went well. Drinks to celebrate? Another text. This one from Tom. Channel 7 wants to interview you again. Something about the settlement? And then one more from a number I didn't recognize. You think you're so smart, but this isn't over. I stared at that last message for a long time. It could have been from Carla or Brandon or any of their friends who thought I'd gotten lucky in the deposition, but something about the tone felt different, angrier, more personal. I was still thinking about it when a car pulled into my driveway. Not Carla's BMW, but a Honda Civic I didn't recognize. The driver got out slowly, looking around like she was afraid of being watched. It was Lily. Nick, I need to talk to you. About what? About what's going to happen next. She looked scared, which was unusual for someone who usually thrived on drama and gossip. Carla knows I talked to you, she said. She knows I told you about the money and the setup. So she's not taking the settlement. She's going to fight. Let her fight. Danny has all the evidence he needs. You don't understand. She's not fighting fair. She's going to destroy you, Nick. Your reputation, your business, everything. How? Lily looked around again, then stepped closer. She's been recording your phone calls, the ones where you sound angry or drunk. She's going to edit them together and make you sound unstable. That's illegal. She's a lawyer. She knows how to make illegal things look legal. I felt the ground shifting under my feet. What else? She's been talking to your customers, trying to get them to say you've been distracted at work, making mistakes. She wants to claim you're having a breakdown that's affecting your job performance. Jesus Christ. And Nick, there's something else. Something I probably shouldn't tell you. Tell me. She's been seeing a therapist. Not for help to build a case. She's been telling the therapist that she's afraid of you, that you've been threatening her. She wants to use those sessions as evidence. I sat down on my porch steps, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. Carla wasn't just fighting the divorce. She was trying to destroy my entire life. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm tired of being part of it, and because you deserve to know what you're up against. After Lily left, I called Danny and told him everything. He listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes. Can she do all that? I asked when I finished. Some of it. The recorded phone calls might not be admissible, depending on how she got them. The therapist sessions are privileged, but if she claims she's afraid for her safety, a judge might allow it. What about talking to my customers? That's just good lawyering. Unethical maybe, but not illegal. I hung up, feeling like I was drowning. For every move I made, Carla had a countermove. For every piece of evidence Danny found, she had a story to explain it away. But as I sat there in the dark, watching Mrs. Graff's house lights go out one by one, I realized something important. Carla was smart, but she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated how much damage a man could do when he had nothing left to lose. The town council meeting was held the third Tuesday of every month in the basement of the library, a fluorescent-lit room that smelled like old books and broken dreams. Usually about 12 people showed up to argue about potholes and snow removal budgets. Tonight, there were 47 people crammed into folding chairs, and they weren't there for municipal business. They were there for the show. I walked in at exactly 7 o'clock, wearing my work clothes and carrying a manila folder that contained everything I needed to end this war. Carla was already there, sitting in the front row with Patricia Keating and Brandon, who was sporting a black eye that hadn't been there yesterday. "Rough week?" I asked Brandon as I walked past. He didn't answer, but his hand moved unconsciously to his face. Apparently, I wasn't the only person in Millfield who didn't appreciate homewreckers. Mayor Davidson called the meeting to order and went through the usual agenda items: street repairs, the upcoming 4th of July festival, a complaint about Mrs. Patterson's cats. Then he got to the item everyone was waiting for. "We have a request from Patricia Keating to address the council regarding a public safety matter." Patricia stood up, every inch the professional advocate. "Thank you, Mayor Davidson. I'm here representing Carla Morrison, who has been the sufferer of an ongoing maltreatment campaign by her estranged husband." A murmur went through the crowd. This was better than cable television. "Mrs. Morrison has been subjected to property destruction, verbal threats, and physical intimidation. Just last week, Mr. Morrison attacked my client's colleague in a public establishment. We're asking the council to consider enhanced penalties for domestic maltreatment." She talked for 10 minutes, painting me as a dangerous stalker who was terrorizing his innocent wife. She had charts, statistics, and legal precedents. She even had a PowerPoint presentation. When she finished, Mayor Davidson asked if anyone wanted to respond. I stood up. "I'd like to address these allegations. Mr. Morrison, this isn't a trial. No, it's not. It's better than a trial. It's the truth." I walked to the front of the room and opened my folder. 47 pairs of eyes were watching me, waiting to see if the local mechanic could hold his own against the big city lawyer. "Patricia Keating wants you to believe I'm a dangerous man," I said. "She wants you to believe I've been maltreating my wife. Let me show you what maltreatment actually looks like." I held up the first document. "This is a credit card statement showing that my wife spent $5,000 of our joint money to pay her lover's bills. This is maltreatment of our marriage." Gasps from the audience. Patricia was on her feet objecting, but Mayor Davidson told her to sit down. "This," I continued, holding up another paper, "is a recording device that my wife hid in my truck to record my private phone calls. This is maltreatment of my privacy." More gasps. Carla was looking pale, but I wasn't finished. "And this," I said, holding up a photograph, "is my wife and Brandon Kemp at the Pineview Motel 14 months ago. Not 8 months like she testified under oath. 14 months! This is maltreatment of the truth." The crowd was buzzing now, but I raised my voice over them. "Patricia Keating says I'm dangerous. She's right. I'm dangerous to liars, cheaters, and lawyers who think small-town people are stupid enough to believe whatever they're told." I turned to face Carla directly. "You want to know what maltreatment looks like? It's spending 15 years married to someone who was planning your destruction from day one. It's finding out your wife has been stealing your money to finance her affair. It's discovering that your own daughter was manipulated into attacking you on social media." Carla was crying now, but they weren't the calculated tears from our porch confrontation. These were real, the kind that came from being exposed in front of everyone who mattered. "You thought I was just a stupid mechanic," I continued. "You thought I'd roll over and let you take everything I'd worked for. You thought wrong." I pulled out the final document. "This is a sworn statement from Lily Chen, detailing how my wife planned this entire divorce, including manipulating me into punching Brandon so she could claim I was violent." The room exploded. People were shouting, chairs were scraping, and Mayor Davidson was banging his gavel like he was trying to drive nails. Brandon was on his feet. "That's a lie." "Is it?" I turned to face him. "Then explain why you came to the Last Hand that night. Explain why you walked right up to me and started talking about my wife. Explain why you said exactly the words that would make any husband take a swing." His face went red. "I was trying to be reasonable." "You were following a script, Carla's script." Patricia was shouting about defamation and slander, but nobody was listening to her anymore. The crowd was on my side now, and they wanted blood. "Mr. Morrison," Mayor Davidson said when the noise died down, "what exactly are you asking for?" "I'm asking for justice. Real justice, not the kind you buy from expensive lawyers." I turned back to the crowd, most of whom I'd known my entire life. These were my customers, my neighbors, the people who'd watched me grow up and build a business and try to be a decent husband and father. Carla Morrison and Brandon Kemp thought they could destroy my reputation in this town. They thought they could make me look like the villain while they rode off into the sunset with my money and my dignity. I paused, looking directly at my wife. They forgot one important thing. This town knows who I am. You've all brought your cars to me when they broke down. You've trusted me with your problems for 20 years. You know I'm not the man Patricia Keating described." The crowd murmured agreement. Mrs. Graff was nodding vigorously, and even the Hendersons were there, looking sympathetic. "So here's what's going to happen," I said. "Carla Morrison is going to accept the settlement offer my lawyer presented. She's going to stop maltreating my customers and spreading lies about my business. She's going to leave Millfield and start her new life somewhere else." "And if she doesn't?" someone called from the back. I smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Then I'll release the rest of the evidence. The financial records, the recorded conversations, the timeline of lies, all of it. And I'll make sure every lawyer in 3 counties knows exactly what kind of person they're dealing with." Carla was sobbing openly now, and Patricia was packing up her briefcase like she couldn't wait to leave. Brandon looked like he wanted to disappear through the floor. "One more thing," I said. "Brandon, I want you to know that black eye you're sporting. That wasn't from me. That was from Jerry Patterson, whose wife you've been hitting on at the country club. Seems like cheating is a pattern with you." Brandon's face went white. Jerry Patterson was 6'4" and had played college football before he took over his family's construction business. "Jerry wanted me to tell you that if you come near his wife again, you'll get more than a black eye." The meeting dissolved into chaos after that. People were talking, laughing, pointing at Carla and Brandon like they were exhibits in a zoo. Patricia was trying to hustle her clients toward the exit, but the crowd wasn't making it easy. I packed up my folder and walked out into the cool night air. Marty was waiting by my truck, grinning like he'd just watched his team win the Super Bowl. "That was beautiful," he said. "That was necessary. What happens now? Now they leave town, and I get my life back." We drove to the Last Hand, where half the town council meeting had relocated. People were buying me drinks, slapping me on the back, treating me like I'd just slayed a dragon. But the best moment came around midnight when my phone buzzed with a text from Kayla. "Dad, I just heard about the town meeting. I'm proud of you. Mom called and said she's taking the settlement. It's over. It's over." 2 words that felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. I walked outside and called Danny to confirm. The papers would be signed by Friday, the divorce finalized within 30 days. Carla would be gone by the weekend, Brandon was already looking for jobs in other cities, and Patricia Keating had apparently decided that Millfield was too small for her practice. The next morning, I was at the garage early, working on Mrs. Patterson's Buick again. The engine was running rough, but it was fixable. Everything was fixable if you knew what you were doing and weren't afraid to get your hands dirty. Tom arrived with coffee and the local newspaper. "You made the front page," he said. The headline read, "Local man fights back against divorce fraud." The article was fair, presenting both sides but clearly sympathetic to my story. The comments online were overwhelmingly supportive. "You're a hero," Tom said. "I'm a guy who got tired of being pushed around. Same thing, sometimes." That afternoon, a moving truck pulled up to my house. I watched from the garage as Carla supervised the loading of her belongings. She didn't look in my direction, didn't wave goodbye, didn't acknowledge the end of 15 years of marriage. Brandon was there too, helping carry boxes like he was eager to get out of town. His BMW had a for sale sign in the window, and I'd heard he was moving to Denver where nobody knew his story. As the truck pulled away, Mrs. Graff appeared at her fence. "Good riddance," she said. "Yeah, good riddance." That evening, I sat on my porch with a beer and watched the sun set over Millfield. The town looked the same as always. Tired houses, cracked sidewalks, the neon sign from the Pineview Motel flickering in the distance. But something felt different. I felt different. My phone rang. Kayla's number. "Dad, I'm coming home this weekend." "You don't have to do that, sweetheart. I know you're busy with school." "I want to. I want to see you. And I want to apologize for that Instagram post." "You already apologized. Not in person. And Dad, I want to help you redecorate. The house is going to feel empty without Mom's stuff." I looked through my front window at the spaces where Carla's furniture used to be. It did look empty, but it also looked clean, like a fresh start. "I'd like that," I said. After we hung up, I finished my beer and went inside. The house was quiet in a way it hadn't been for years. Not the tense quiet of a failing marriage, but the peaceful quiet of a man who'd fought for what mattered and won. I walked through the rooms, already imagining how they'd look with different furniture, different pictures on the walls. Maybe I'd turn Carla's old office into a workshop. Maybe I'd finally finish the basement the way I'd always wanted. Maybe I'd start dating again. though that seemed impossible to imagine right now. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from an unknown number. Saw the news coverage. You're an inspiration. My husband cheated too, and I thought I had to just take it. Thank you for showing me I don't. I stared at that message for a long time. Apparently, my story had reached beyond Millfield, beyond the gossip networks and local news coverage. Other people in similar situations were watching, learning, maybe finding the courage to fight back. That felt good. Better than good. I turned off the lights and headed upstairs to bed. Tomorrow, I'd go back to work, fixing other people's problems and building the life I wanted. The life I deserved, the life I'd fought for and won. In the distance, I could hear the sound of cars on Route 9, people traveling to somewhere else, somewhere better. But I was staying right here in Millfield, in the house I'd saved, in the town that knew who I really was. They'd called me a lot of things over the past few months. Sufferer, villain, hero, fool. But tonight I knew exactly what I was. I was Nick Morrison, and I'd played the last hand. And I'd won.